Thanks for joining us today. I'm Dee Dee Laugesen, Executive Secretary for the Committee on the Present Danger China. We appreciate your interest in our weekly webinars in which we expose and analyze the Chinese Communist Party's unrestricted warfare against America and the help being provided to the CCP in waging that warfare by captured U.S. elites. We encourage you to visit presentdangerchina.org for information on new programs, access to videos of our past webinars, and tons of other very valuable content. Subscribe to our Substack at presentdangerchina.substack.com and follow us on X at CPDC. For today's webinar, select the Q&A from your navigation bar to make comments or ask questions, and open up the chat for important links that we will share. Our moderator today is Frank Gaffney. Frank is the president of the Institute for the American Future, vice chair of the Committee on the Present Danger China, and host of Securing America on Real America's Voice Network. Frank, let's get started in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of our weekly webinar series sponsored by the Committee on the Present Danger China, focused on the phenomenon of unrestricted warfare, the kind of war that the Chinese Communist Party has been waging against our country for decades, about which very few Americans, know much, or even perhaps have an inkling about, let alone the success that unrestricted warfare has made possible for the Chinese communists. This is a special program in this series because we are going to be able to both present and extol a very high-quality movie that has been made about China's unrestricted warfare, specifically the very ominous form that it has taken in the past few years. That would be biological warfare. And as we know from a book that was published by two top Chinese colonels back in 1999, entitled Unrestricted Warfare, biological attacks on the United States was on the list of the kinds of instruments they would use to take us down without engaging in traditional kinetic fighting. This film, entitled The Unrestricted War, is a product of NTD Canada. It premiered there before coming to the United States. I had the privilege, along with many of those who will be presenting today, of participating in a screening of the film on Capitol Hill last week. It is an extraordinarily impressive production in every sense of the word. The content, the quality of the filmmaking, the performances of the various actors. And it is a very high privilege, I think, to be able to encourage every one of you to take the 2 hours that is required to witness this dramatization of what the Chinese Communist Party is up to, what it is like for its own people, for the society in which they find themselves, but also what it is engaged in terms of its malevolent ambitions to remove us as the impediment to their domination of the planet. We have a very high-quality cast, if I can use that expression here, including several directly responsible for making this film, and one who stars in it, as a matter of fact, through a videotape of remarks that she made on the occasion of that Capitol Hill briefing, and others who have been as admiring of it as am I, and as engaged in trying to awaken the American people to the immense danger that we face from the CCP. We're going to begin with the trailer of the film, just to give you a sense of it, and it hopefully will whet your appetite for seeing the entirety of it in due course. Talk about how you can do that momentarily. But let's go to the trailer for the Unrestricted War now.
Wipe her from her database and burn the body. Keep this contained, or you will join her in the furnace.
How'd you even get these numbers?
That's state secret. I'll be charged with espionage.
Then you better consider a way not to get caught, or you will lose everything of value here in China.
They both exhibit high temperature, severe headaches, and I'm most concerned that it might be quite contagious.
Why waste a good pandemic, right, General?
You have a serious viral outbreak that can threaten the whole world.
You mean fake news?
I'll never be able to come back to China.
Right now, our safety is what matters most, nothing else.
Mama!
You saw the chaos in the hospital, right? If the party has a plan, it needs to be better.
You think you know better than the party leaders?
I need to be with my family.
They will remain there to complete your mission.
I will not commit a crime against humanity.
The war never ended for us. So to double-cross me, Dr. Conrad, is something I cannot allow.
We're going to hear first from a man who literally made this film possible. His name is Wang. He is the president of the new Tang dynasty in Canada. He is the executive producer of the Unrestricted War, a friend of many years now, and a man I admire greatly, and we're delighted to be able to present him to introduce this wonderful product. Joe, over to you.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Frank, for that kind introduction. I hope you all enjoyed the trailer. I promise that the movie itself is much better, and it's available on Ganjin World right now. So I just tried it before I get on. So it's there. If you subscribe to Ganjin World, then you can watch the movie. As one of the executive producers of the movie, my job was to get as much money for Yan, the director, and the team, so that they can produce a high-quality film. I'm also proud to say that I'm normally not on the creative side, but on the business. In this case, because I can say that I'm an expert in the subject matter, so I hopefully contributed in some meaningful ways on the content as well. For those who don't know me, I grew up in communist China and went to Fudan University in Shanghai. For those people who are familiar with Shanghai, you would know that Erjunda, the second military medical university of the People's Liberation Army, is next door to Fudan University. So we have close friends there, and one of my high school buddies actually went to that school. So I can tell you that the Chinese military's bioweapon program is real. In fact, the Chinese defense minister in 2005, Chi Haotian, said in a meeting that his bioweapon program is ready to wipe out the U.S. population. This is an internal meeting, but I can tell you that the bioweapon program of the CCP is real. After I graduated from Fudan University, it was the Tiananmen Square massacre that everybody knows. I was lucky enough to escape China in 1990 and come to Canada for my PhD in molecular biology. And then I did a postdoc at Cornell University. And then I spent 10 years in one of the largest vaccine companies in the world. Was to mention that in 2003, I spearheaded the vaccine development against SARS-CoV-1, if you remember. That year, actually, 41 people died of COVID-1 in Toronto alone. But the disease went away, so our program didn't go further. But when SARS-CoV-2 came around, they all look very familiar to me. And when we were trying to make this movie, my expertise in COVID and vaccines come handy. I hope it shows in the movie itself. My second point to make is that in communist China, there was no such thing of non-military medical research. So everything, every discovery, every advancement can be and will be repurposed to serve the goals of the CCP, and in this case, their bioweapon program. Well, I mean, you can still argue the origin of COVID-19 and the vaccines and so on and so forth. But a former colleague of mine, Dr. Yu Xuefeng, he learned it the hard way. When I quit my vaccine job to do NTD full-time, he also left the company and he went to China to study, to establish a vaccine company, just like Jim in the movie you're going to see. Then when COVID started, being a Canadian, Chinese Canadian, he's a Canadian citizen, I believe. He had a deal with, at that time, the Liberal government, Trudeau government, that his company is going to develop a vaccine against COVID-19 and likely ahead of the Western companies like Pfizer. So he worked really hard to achieve that. And in October that year, 2020, he actually was ready to ship his vaccine to Canada from China. But his shipment was stopped at the airport by the PLA. And then the Chinese military claimed that he couldn't ship the vaccines out of China because the vaccine was a PLA property. So his agreement with the Trudeau government becomes not even worth the paper it was written on. So
Joe, may I ask you to wrap up, please? We've got to get a lot more folks through.
All right. So my point is, so the bioweapon program is real, and there is no such thing of non-military medical research in China.
Thank you.
Be careful with the CCP. I must say that the Chinese people are very hardworking, beautiful people. Borrow a word from Trump, but the CCP is not. Don't trust the CCP.
Amen. Joe Wang, thank you very much. This is adding some very important texture to the film. We're going to hear next from its director, also producer, Yan Ma, and he's a man of some considerable accomplishment in the film industry, and I think this is a prime example of a very skilled practitioner of the art of filmmaking. Jan, please add some further insights into both the film itself, if you would, but also some of your experiences in trying to bring it to audiences in Canada and here as well.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Frank. So for this one, this film is inspired by the pandemic and a few related events. We mainly focused on the early stage of the pandemic, so we wanted to discuss how it all got started and how the information got censored and the public were manipulated, and eventually the CCP turned this local public health crisis into a global pandemic. Yeah, we did some investigation, and a lot of our characters is actually based on real people, including the whistleblower of the COVID-19 and some other related events like the Chinese scientists stealing the viral sample from P4 lab in Winnipeg, and all the experience the stories like Joe's previous worker. So yeah, it's a fictional story, but we did many research and we tried to stay very close to what happened. And during this film, obviously, it's going to be very. We know, I mean, as a Chinese Canadian filmmakers, we knew this from the very beginning of the project. It's going to be very challenging for us, and we may even face real risks. Like because many of my crew, they still have family members in China, including myself. So during the production, the family members in China have been facing a huge amount of pressure from the communist government. And just my family, for example, a lot of my relatives got harassed and threatened by the local government officials and also by the National Security Office. And one of my immediate family income got cut off by the local government at the very beginning of this project. I started the project, so it's been almost 2 years now. Yeah, it's been so it created a very difficult situation for us, and surprisingly, even like the business overseeing here in Canada, in North America, they still afraid that they will become targets of the CCP. So they're sometimes too scared to rent the locations to us, and yeah, so it's all this kind of challenges that we have to conquer during the way. Yeah, it's difficult, but I mean, like we still, I mean, our team and our producers and our entire crew still like stay strong, and because we know this is like important, very important story to tell, and we wanted to share this information because most of people don't actually realize that this unrestricted warfare is actually happening. So when we see what happened in the pandemic, how eventually, like things got out of control and the CCP starting to weaponize this whole crisis and use all this power to manipulate things for this political purpose, it aligned perfectly with the concepts of unrestricted warfare. And it's right now, since we are so closely connected to China, it's like this warfare is the invisible warfare to me is happening almost in every field. We have to like be aware of that and be prepared for the future crisis. Like we can I always consider this as a warning. Because next time, like if we're not prepared, next time maybe we are not so lucky. Like if in the future something worse than COVID happened, we may not have a second chance.
Yan Ma, thank you. A very important warning and takeaway from this film for sure. And we're going to talk a bit more about what that might entail in a moment with one of our distinguished presenters who's got a background in biowarfare defense. But before we do, I wanted to ask for brief remarks by one of the men who I met in the course of this panel discussion sponsored by, I think, Epoch Times on Capitol Hill. His name is Casey Fleming. He has been a specialist in counterintelligence and related black arts. He is, in fact, the CEO of a group called Black Ops Partners. He is a consultant to various national security agencies and impressed me greatly with his remarks about, again, the sort of context of this film and what we have an urgent need to know about what the Chinese Communist Party is up to and what its implications are for all of us in the unrestricted warfare space in particular. He is the author of a forthcoming book entitled The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm Killing Your Freedom. Casey, it's great to have you with us. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you for having me. The movie is accurate. It's extremely accurate and it's on point. It describes only one method of unrestricted warfare. When the book came out from the two Chinese PLA colonels in 1999, which, a reminder, that was over 25 years ago, there were 20 methods. There are over 150 methods of unrestricted warfare now. So it's something that's very important for all of us to understand. Unrestricted warfare is targeted and targeting the individual. So it's not targeted at our military or our government. It's targeted at the individual, which is the reason I decided to write a book, so to inform the individuals, not just Americans. It affects all people in the free nations, and even Chinese that want that, the wonderful people that want to be free. So these methods of unrestricted warfare are meant to weaken the enemy, that's us, by every means possible, so we don't have a will to fight anymore. And in fact, they don't ever want to fire a shot. They follow Sun Tzu, the CCP does, and they want to win the war without fighting. So what this is an attack on the individual, the man, the woman, the child. Again, it's not focused on the government or the military. So the way we think about war in the United States and the free world is you're either in war or you're not. You're in peace or war. And if you're in war, your military is going to take care of you. That was in the past. What we've seen now of 25 plus years of brilliant and efficient execution against unrestricted warfare, we've seen really what's happening. So a couple of examples: drug warfare, that's fentanyl, carfentanil, xylazine, nitazine, even vaping products, and even dopamine being a drug used through social media. Cognitive warfare, which is social media leading the charge with TikTok and so on. So this war is focused on the American people. This movie does a great job of picking one of those and becoming very, very accurate with it. And just understand that, use this as a basis to understand unrestricted warfare and the diabolical thought process to pursue it against the free world for complete and utter takeover. So again, Frank, thank you very much for having me, and over to the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Casey, and I'm so glad you introduced this term diabolical, because that clearly is part of what is animating all of this. It is demonic, in fact, especially when you talk about the prospect of the mass murder of our countrymen and women. In fact, Joe made reference to Chiao, who at the time of a speech he made to a party caucus of some kind about 20 years ago, made reference, I believe, to not just destroying the population of the United States, but literally depopulating the country so it could be colonized by China. A man who has brought that to my attention and taught me much more about the threat of Chinese biological warfare programs is going to be our next guest. But before we turn to Dr. Sean Lin, I did want to just give you a snippet of a very impressive presentation that the star of the program, you saw her several times in the course of the trailer, a very accomplished actress by the name of Uni Park. The remarks that she made prior, actually, to the panel presentation on the Hill were, I thought, sufficiently compelling that we want to share those with you now as well. We'll turn to her video. She was unable to be with us in person. Let's go.
I really loved portraying General Chan. Anyway, first, I am very proud to be here, and I'm very, very proud to be part of the Unrestricted War. It was more than just another role for me. It was a very rare opportunity to contribute to a story. Not only, it's a story that is not only timely, but necessary. When I first read the script, I was drawn to it by its emotional depth and complex storyline. The Unrestricted War doesn't just give away simple answers. On the surface, it's a political thriller, but underneath, it's about the quiet struggles many of us face today. And, you know, we have to choose always between truthful survival, duty, and conscience, and power and loyalty. This film doesn't rely just on entertainment. It relies on truth. The truth is that people in oppressive regimes are often used by those in power for their own goals. And that truth is what makes this film powerful, important, and deeply human. Playing the role of General Chen was an emotional and challenging experience. What intrigued me the most about playing her character were the inner struggles she carries. The contradictions, the secrets, the pain that never had the space to surface. She's not just a typical antagonist. She is an example of what happens when one's innocence, loyalty, and love have been stolen. She has become a weapon shaped by a regime that understands how to exploit grief, fear, and loyalty for her country. Her true identity was stolen, like many others. And that brings me to the heart of why this story matters. I feel deep sympathy for those living under systems that take away their freedom to speak and right to be heard. Just like everyone, most Chinese people want dignity, choice, and a chance to live without a fear. The Unrestricted War shows that it's not the people who are dangerous. It's the regime that fears their freedom. Her generation now holds power in China. Despite everything, they still cling to a distorted idealization of communist ideology. Even today, they maintain a Cold War mindset. And the unrestricted warfare is a direct extension of that way of thinking. The Unrestricted War is ultimately a film about awakening. It's about the cost of silence and the power of truth. And I hope that by sharing this film, we can begin to build more compassion, courage, and empathy for those who cannot yet speak for themselves. Thank you.
Wow. Very, very compelling, I think, description of this film, and I think what you will take away from it as well once you've seen it. We're going to hear next from the individual I was speaking of a moment ago, another very important contributor to my own personal understanding of what we're up against, as well as a leader in trying to help our country be defended against the Chinese Communist Party. He knows it well from having survived the massacre in Tiananmen Square as a young man. His name is Dr. Xiaoxu Sean Lin. He is a PhD, an Army veteran with experience with the biodefense program of the United States military. He is the executive director of the Global Alliance Against Communist Disinformation and Propaganda, a survivor, as I mentioned, a microbiologist, and a great member of our Committee on the Present Danger China. We're very proud to have him here to talk a little bit more about the nature of the Chinese biowarfare threat and how we saw it actualized during COVID-19 and the dangers, as Casey Fleming said, of not having properly learned the lessons from all of that in the space of the unrestricted warfare against us. Sean Lin, over to you, sir.
Frank, thank you for inviting me to the webinar. I'm glad I speak after Ms. Uni Park, because her speech actually reminded me, when we talk about biological warfare from the CCP, actually it encompasses many fields, actually. Even when Mrs. Park talked about the emotional manipulation that CCP can have on General Chen Wei, this reminded me, many Chinese Communist Party member, if you talk to them in daily life, they act like very normal people, family guy. But when they assume the identity of the Communist Party member, when they work in that capacity, they can sacrifice all their own moralities, all standards, all ethics standards. They can just follow the orders, just like those doctors or organ harvestings. Many people cannot imagine why a physician can do that. But when they are following the orders, when they're following the Communist Party's ideology and leadership, when they're in that situation, when they assume their role, they are abandoning their souls and morality standard. So this is actually a very important aspect. And also, in terms of biological warfare, one of the key areas that the CCP working on is brain manipulation, monitoring people's emotion, capture the patterns, and analyze what kind of stimuli can help modulate, manipulate people's emotions, and how do they control people's ideology. So this is another part of the biological warfare as well. And they work very strongly on brain-computer interfaces, different tactics that can capture brain signals and then manipulate it. So that's one aspect. And then regarding the movie, of course, you talk about the biological agent, the microbe as a bioweapon tools. So this part, I think the whole world also need to pay serious attention to it, because a lot of time, our understanding of bioweapons stay in the last century. We talk about anthrax, we talk about these powders you can spread, so you think about capacities or facilities inside China that can build up these like anthrax powders, So these are the traditional way of doing bioweapon. But now, 20 years into the 21st century, we are in a very different age right now. Not only just a gain of function study that can used to generate new pathogens, but there are many other tools, other genetic manipulating tools that can easily create new bioweapons. So I think that the whole world need to understand the threat is totally unprecedented now. And we are in a very dangerous situation. So I'm just maybe briefly mentioned in two areas. One is the mirror life study. So mirror life is one new area. Both US scientists and Chinese scientists are working on it. And in here we see this kind of so-called scientific collaboration also are into a field that are very dangerous for human nature. And even last year, about 38 scientists actually published an article in Science to urge a ban on this study, because these mirror life microbe, if they were generated they are able to evade immune system. They are able to create disaster in the ecosystem, in the nature. These microbes, if they are generated in the reverse mirror forms against their natural form, it can propagate without control, without check. And so these will be a dangerous situation, and this field is moving fast. And also this field can be supported by AI supported analysis, as well as the rapid growth of synthetic biology field. And so nowadays it's very convenient to synthesize molecules, whether it's DNA, proteins, and it's very cheap. And these technology can widely be used in generating new pathogens, as well as generating new molecules, maybe in the reverse mirror forms for these molecules. And then second aspect I want to briefly highlight is actually insect as vectors. These kind of bio weapon potentials. For one example is actually mosquitoes. And so both Chinese scientists, as well Chinese scientists in the United States Institute, are working on doing additional genetic manipulations in the mosquitoes. And so, whether it's chikungunya, whether it's Zika, whether it's dengue virus, there are many alpha viruses were transmitted by mosquitoes. But nowadays, not only just the mutation can be generated in these viruses, the mosquito can also be further genetically manipulated to enable them to have to support better propagation of some of the pathogens. In this way, it can create additional danger, and these mosquito vectors can be distributed in a specific location, causing regional controlled epidemic. And this will be a different forms of the bioweapon that can be utilized in a conflict. So there are different potentials that we are facing, and the biotechnology field moving very fast. Bioengineering is evolving very fast, and so CCP, we're clearly understanding that they need to take the high ground of the biotechnology as well as bioweapon development. They are not binding to so-called Geneva Bioweapon Convention. Don't trust CCP. You don't even need to have any moment to believe the Chinese government will follow their signed the document contracts. They don't regard any. They don't care any of these. They don't care about human lives. I think the fundamental understanding we can learn from the movie is that the CCP don't care about human life. All they care about is how to use any means possible to make themselves control the power. And so I think we can learn a lot from this movie, and I feel this movie itself is an important tool, important weapon that counters CCP's cognition warfare. I remember with CCP, when they heavily promote their war movie, for example, the battle in the Lake Changjin, talk about the Korean War, how they portray the U.S. Army, how they make Chinese people believe the LPLA is a hero. They can totally twist the history. And I think now we finally see a movie faithfully present what is happening, in terms of CCP's taking advantage of the pandemic and make it a bioweapon, make it a very useful tool for them to harm the whole world. So I think we need to be very, very alarmed on the unrestricted warfare the CCP waged against the United States, against the free world. And it's never too late that we stand up against these kind of unrestricted warfare. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Very powerful observations. And we're going to ask you some follow-on questions momentarily. But before we do, a man that I have come to admire greatly for his, command of so many of these subjects, informed by his extraordinary interviews with American and other thought leaders. That is, of course, the title of his program is American Thought Leaders with the Epoch Times. He is, in addition to a man who has observed and reported on these matters as a journalist for many years, in, I think, a series of award-winning productions. He is also someone who is personally engaged in the fight, insofar as he is a practitioner of Falun Gong, which, by the way, features prominently and heroically in this film. We're delighted to have Jan Jekielek be our cleanup batter for this particular program. He's joined us in the past with great effect, and we look forward to his comments about the importance of this film going forward and what we can do to maximize its impact. Jan, welcome back.
Frank, thank you so very much for inviting me on. That was an incredible panel we participated in. And, just Jan and Joe, I wanted to say I was so blown away by what I saw in this film. And just because it's such a gripping film in itself, right, in its own right, never mind the very critical subject matter. One thing I wanted to touch on a little bit is the film manages to portray some really critical I guess, elements of the reality of how the CCP or the Chinese Communist Party operates that I just don't think are generally known, or perhaps the scale of them aren't known. And so, of course, Casey described the way unrestricted warfare works, right? Any means that can be used as a weapon becomes used as a weapon. And there's also this added dimension where it's not just targeting a military, right? It's targeting you individually, it's targeting the population. So the Chinese Communist Party, perhaps, I don't know, we could argue about what its most powerful tools are, but its information, its ability to wage information warfare, to basically shape the narratives around itself has been really, way too effective, I think would be the best way to describe that. And, so I want just to briefly touch on that, right? You have, Chinese communist propaganda completely penetrated across all US cable systems. That's astonishing. Of course, people are watching less cable, but nonetheless, you have, CGTN, what's now called CGTN, which used to be called CCTV, is basically available in any American household that has cable. And that is astonishing. And there's been American companies that have helped actually make that happen. For years, there were these inserts into many of the biggest newspapers in the country, called China Daily inserts. And China Daily is one of the propaganda organs of the Chinese Communist Party. It's basically propaganda newspaper in English. And they were these inserts with, of course, they had a little disclaimer that said this is a paid supplement from the China Daily or something like that. But they were just regularly inserted, and U.S. newspapers were paid millions of dollars to basically promote Chinese Communist Party, propaganda in significant amount inside. It's actually very interesting. The Congressman Abe Hamadeh, freshman congressman, he came out as his first bill that he actually offered to Congress. He was shocked to discover that this China Daily, in this day and age in 2025, is being basically delivered, by by U.S. congressional staffers to every congressional office across Congress, and that's just an astonishing thing. So he introduced a bill that just prevented that from happening unless someone explicitly asked for it. This is unsolicited delivery of Chinese communist propaganda to every congressional office. Just examples, and perhaps the biggest example, and we've heard more about this, is TikTok, and we've heard about its incredibly powerful ability to basically, surveil anyone who actually has the app on their phone, right? You have to remember that in China, they have a law, the national security law, and the national security law basically says if you are a Chinese company or Chinese individual, if you are asked, you have to spy for the Chinese regime, and you're not allowed to say that you're doing so. Okay, and that combination, you can just imagine, this unbelievably powerful surveillance tool that basically, pulls all information from everything that comes into on your microphone, everything that comes on your camera, right? And there's this unparalleled ability to both take in that information and then deliver that information to you in such a way that basically plays on your I guess your particular issues, idiosyncrasies, and so forth, which it's also studying. So what an unbelievably powerful weapon of information control, right? What we see in the film is how incredibly powerful the Chinese Communist Party is within its own borders of basically pushing information out quickly. And you see, Uni Park, of course, the general, we saw her fantastic speech earlier. We see her basically talking about, well, the truth is just fake news. And you can, set basically inside China, that is, directly broadcast across to the entire population. But outside China, these same narratives, much more subtly, are shaped basically through TikTok and other methods. For example, WeChat is another very popular messenger that is just kind of freely available and also under the same total control of the Chinese regime. Ultimately, the thing that you see in this film, which I think is something that it's very difficult to fathom, to kind of grasp, is just that the Chinese Communist Party basically exercises complete hierarchical control over the entire system. Okay, and that it's hard for us to imagine, but it's Chinese Communist Party supremacy, and those strategies are created at the top and pushed down, and you have these regions then competing for trying to implement these top directives from the Chinese Communist Party. So it's like a weird form of competition around actually implementing the dictates of the Chinese Communist Party. I think you see that happening in the film. Again, unbelievably powerful, and not delivered in a kind of documentary style where you're talking about this. You just kind of start to understand a little bit about how it might work in a society like that, right? So, in terms of where to take things from here, Frank, this is what you I think what you asked me about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the first thing to do is to share this film. Ganjing World is an incredible platform. That's I think the only platform that is very deliberately committed to basically avoiding political censorship of any sort. Specifically, this is exactly the kind of film that the Chinese Communist Party would try to censor. They have this unbelievable ability to influence even U.S. media, especially U.S. legacy media. You see all these hit pieces that the New York Times, for example, is putting out against Shenyun Performing Arts. Like 10 or 12 of them, a kind of unbelievable focus, a spurious focus. So we can see that there's this ability to influence, and this film kind of breaks through all of that. So if you're using Ganjing World, you're actually using a platform that is literally completely free. In a way, it exists to be free of this particular nefarious Chinese Communist Party influence. And then this film, by sharing this film, you're helping people understand kind of at a deeper level about how this system works in all these dimensions: the biological warfare, the information warfare, the way they get into your head, the way they use your family against you to basically get you to do things that you wouldn't want to do, like, for example, the mission that the main character is put again. And so that's what I would say. I would say, get into that, watch the film, get inspired by it as I did, and share it maximally as much as you can. I think this is the most powerful thing you can do.
Amen. And thank you. And, if an injunction like that might ordinarily be somewhat onerous, but I can assure you that you will find this film engaging, if troubling. Nonetheless, I think you will feel called to heed Jan's very important prescription here. Joe, could I come back to you? And I want to make this as interactive as we can, so please feel free to respond to comments others are making as you see fit. But just a further word on this Ganjing World. I was unfamiliar with it before the panel. Could you just tell us a little bit more about its sponsorship and how it works and where you can find it and all that?
Oh, me? Yeah, Ganjing World was created a few years ago to provide basically family-friendly internet site so that the whole family could enjoy videos and films without the violence, the sexual things, and other things. So it's Ganjin means clean in Chinese. So it's a clean internet.
But basically a sort of streaming platform, would you say?
Right.
Okay. Terrific. And so if one wants to see the film, you simply you subscribe, or it's at a la carte, or how does that work?
I believe you can subscribe to Ganjin World's premium. I think I just did today. It's $6.99 a month with quite a few very high quality films that you can watch for the whole family every month. They have new films. So $6.99. You can subscribe to it, or you can pay. I forgot how much is to just watch Ganjin.
See this film.
See this film alone. It's $12 or something.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, the point that I most especially wanted to reprise from the panel discussion, asking Dr. Sean Lin to lead off on this, but Casey and anybody else is welcome to comment as well. This idea that the Chinese Communist Party not only has as its plan using biological warfare against us, it actually did. And that's very powerfully communicated by the film. But Sean, you talked a bit about a coming capability that they've been assiduously working on, and I can only imagine benefited from Tony Fauci's help with the kind of genetic engineering technology, gain of function technology specifically. But could you talk a little bit about this idea that they could actually achieve the capacity to attack certain ethnicities or certain populations and leave unaffected others, or at least, greatly reduce the implications for others being harmed? Is that a real thing? It sounds like science fiction, but is it now something that is perhaps at hand for the Chinese Communist Party?
Oh, it's the technology is moving very fast, and actually, many of our audience maybe know about the genetic editing tool, like a CRISPR, right? So these technologies have been gradually more and more mature in the last 10 years. So this is one thing. And actually, recently, there are new reports talk about the Chinese scientists actually have developed new technology to do large segments of genetic material editing. Because CRISPR in the past, it was primarily small segments. But now with the new technologies, it's called programmable chromosomes engineering. These PCE technology can do not just kilobase, actually metabase. It's like million nuclear bases. They can do large scale editing. So there are technology tools now can even take out some of the chromosomes or not entirely or even a significant part of the chromosomes. So the technology is like evolving so crazily fast. And the key issues that the Chinese scientists are at the front of some of these key frontiers of this genetic editing technology. And they are very actively collecting genetic information from American populations. And they've been doing this for at least more than 10 years. Because even when I was in the military, I received emails from Chinese company offering doing bioinformatics and analysis for our samples, for our U.S. military soldiers' samples. So you can see that how aggressive they are. They understand with the next generation sequencing capacity being popular in the United States, many hospitals are this sequencing analysis for many genetic disease disease or cancer studies, right? So when you have the sequencing capacity, you have a lot of data coming out of the sequence, but how do you analyze them, right? So GCP ramp up their capacity for bioinformatic analysis, and then they offer these to the U.S. hospital systems. And so, yeah, many U.S. hospitals send their data to China for analysis. That's the issue. They're collecting many of these data. And now, with understanding of Caucasian people, American people's genetic traits, they can design drug targets, especially focus on unique molecular receptors that can, maybe unique to certain ethnic groups. So I think this capacity is there already, and probably they are actually working on it, just try to see which one works. So these capacity, they are maturing fast every day. And I feel it's a very dangerous situation.
Working, in other words, on weaponizing it, I think is your point. And Casey, to this same topic, there's reportedly a comprehensive effort by the Chinese Communist Party to create sort of digital twins of every American, that by aggregating this immense amount of data, not least from, as I understand it, things like 23andMe, but also from TikTok, the kind of big data acquisition opportunities that exist in that. Could you talk a little bit about what this might mean for the security of the people of the United States if all of this is weaponized as well?
Well, that also feeds into the artificial intelligence world as well.
Yes.
So if you look at all these different technologies being manipulated and weaponized against the free world, now you're seeing something that is beyond most people's comprehension. So we've seen AI just climb as far as capability over the last few years. We listened to Sean Lin on the biological piece of it. All of these things are, multiple factors of seriousness. And you put in, a digital twin, certainly, stealing the DNA samples from entire families from 23andMe and Ancestry.com allows them to study each individual. And by the way, for over 10 years, the CCP has had a file on every man, woman, and child in the United States. And not to mention stealing information around 16 million military and government personnel with the OPM hack probably 6 or 7 years ago. So, and also don't forget, all of this technology was stolen from the United States. It was either partnered with Silicon Valley firms where they invested and then demanded the IP, or they just completely went out and stole it, either through cyber. And if they can't get it through cyber and they still have the shopping list that needs to be completed, then they deploy those internal spies, insider threat, whether it's universities, companies, even government agencies. And that's not just the US, it's Canada, Australia, UK, you name it. So these digital twins can actually, in the internet, they can model you and mimic you and completely delete your security and basically everything that our society is built on, which is cyber security, chips, and so on. And all that can be rendered pretty much obsolete. One other thing is quantum computing is something that is also a major threat. Quantum computing renders the current encryption that we have today, mathematically based encryption, it renders, and we're very close to that actually occurring, the obsolescence of encryption. And then we have to look at future encryption, which would be physics-based encryption. So this is very serious. My colleagues really lay out a situation really around the biological warfare piece of it and information warfare. But all these married together, and they are an exponential threat to our survival as a nation, as a people, and as a free world. And again, my fellow colleagues pointed out, the CCP completely does not respect human life. Human life is expendable for the ultimate goal, which is ultimate power and ultimate control over the people.
Yeah. You know, I'm fond of pointing out that if the Chinese Communist Party, as has been alleged, has killed 100 million of their own people, and that doesn't include, 4, maybe even 500 million that they've murdered as fetuses in utero. How do we think they'll treat us?
That's a great question. Let me add to that. If you
on.
want to see how you're going to be treated and your family and your grandchildren will be treated, look how they treat the Falun Gong, the Uyghurs, and the Tibetans. They're all viewed as inferior races that need to be scrubbed and re-educated, which in their term means torture. Also, don't forget the human organ transplants, which are forced, which another word for that is murder. And so the recent estimates of that are about 3 million. And typically those are the Falun Gong folks that have much better bodies than the regular population. So we're dealing with, again, the diabolical piece of it, and the most formidable enemy the planet has ever seen.
Right. Jan Ma, you, I think, touched on this in your remarks, but I'd ask you to amplify on it, the people of China, and not least what they were put through in this COVID exercise. I don't think you showed scenes of people, physically having their apartment buildings gates welded shut, but you had police standing, inside them to prevent people from getting out of their residential compounds. Could you talk a little bit about this point that Sean has made, that Casey has made twice, about, the attitude of the CCP towards individuals, whether they're their own or ours, and how that was manifested in ways that you've captured in the film so brilliantly?
Well, I mean, I grew up in China, so I kind of experienced the system, the whole system. They're brainwashed. So I'll say for most of Chinese people, a lot of them feel confused, especially for Chinese generation, because all the systematic brainwash, the propaganda that forced to them, that make them feel like the entire world is their enemy. So it's like they made us hate Japanese, hate Americans, hate basically every country in the free world. So it doesn't allow people to see how well Japan did and Taiwan did or Hong Kong did join the free world, join the normal society. So they need to use the propaganda to put this hatred layer at the very bottom of the Chinese people's mind, so they can manipulate it at the time of necessary to trigger people's emotion, so they can hide behind and see people fighting each other. So that's exactly what they did in the Cultural Revolution. In all this, they called political movements, right? They just encourage some Chinese people to kill the others. And in the Cultural Revolution, that reached extreme, like the children kill their parents, kill their teachers, so they can hide behind. Basically, in the end, ultimately, they gain the power. That's what they want, right? And I mean, to the whole world, it's actually exactly the same mindset. So, like Joe and mentioned earlier, I as a Chinese, I absolutely, cause I grew up there, so I understand Chinese people. They're like brave and hardworking, and it's just this this brainwash, this propaganda. We need to find a way to break it, so they can understand the true enemy is never the rest of the world. It's actually it's the CCP, right? So that's the censorship. We need to go through the censorship so they can realize that.
Well,
and
hopefully this film will be contributing to
hopefully
breaking through that firewall, as they call it.
Yeah.
Let me come to you, Jan. I complimented you, and I mean it. I think the work that you've done with American thought leaders and more generally with Epoch Times has been surpassingly important. I would also specifically applaud the focus you've done in any number of your interviews and the various documentaries and so on that you all have been producing on this phenomenon of elite capture and that form of unrestricted warfare against our country, and how it has enabled so many of the others to be successful as well. The central character, without giving away the plot here, in the film, Uni's character is one of the most impressive, but the central character is a Canadian, you know, I guess bioengineer, modeled after apparently Joe's friend. Talk a little bit about that particular individual and the arc of his experience with the Chinese Communist Party, and whether that should be an object lesson, really, for everybody else who's operating as he did initially, under the illusion that, you know, this is just business.
Thank you, Frank. You know, it first of all, an incredibly well done character. And I think actually, again, as you suggest, a very, I mean, actually his route, right, for someone who has started working side by side or with the Chinese Communist Party or companies with China, it's kind of like a very positive arc in the end. And I guess I don't want to give away too much, but I guess I have to, based on what you're asking me, because ultimately, so, you know, with a lot of opportunity, this gentleman who's, you know, top of his game as a genetic engineer, vaccinologist, he brings his company to China. And is, you know, very successful, has a very positive relationship, shares information. You know, when you have a company in China, you have to kind of transfer your IP to a Chinese company there, so that this is all kind of portrayed in there. And but the thing is, what happens the moment that the Chinese regime has a crisis or has some kind of reason to use you, suddenly he gets co-opted. People come to him and say, well, I need you to do this and this for me, which is, you know, basically completely unacceptable. He sees his, you know, the coworker from the other side, from the Chinese company's side, basically be vilified in public and then get himself co-opted to work for the regime. He doesn't want to do it. In fact, they threaten his family. So now he has to do something, which is really kind of extreme. And but this is the big but. He discovers along the way, he understands he's being leveraged, but he realizes, he finds this inner strength inside himself that he realizes there's something that I cannot do, and that kind of changes him, and he starts working with you know, essentially some other characters in there to basically stop this terrible thing that the regime is demanding of him from ever happening. But I think this is exemplary in a way of the way that the Chinese Communist Party co-opts its people. Because at the beginning, it's all very nice, and you get celebrated, and you get a lot of very positive feedback. And there's so many stories of this. Of course, you get very rich and so forth. Thank you, Frank. It's, for whatever reason, I don't think about the money as often as perhaps I should. But yeah, but ultimately the point is, the moment comes where you have to pay the piper. And once again, the Chinese Communist Party is supreme, and everyone is expendable. Everyone and anything is expendable if the Communist Party itself is in threat. In any sort of threat, and that's basically what we see manifest in there. So, I mean, another reason why this film is kind of incredibly powerful, because it's sort of, this is something that kind of creeps this understanding. You don't have someone telling you this like I'm telling you right now, right? You experience this film and you kind of get the picture that this is actually kind of how it works, and it's incredibly important because it's really different. These communist societies are very different from Western societies, and even ones that are that themselves are kind of gravitating in that particular direction. And frankly, it's a great lesson as to why not to gravitate in that particular direction as well. But it's very easy once you have a lot of money and a lot of intellectual property and sort of thing at stake to basically be co-opted, because you're also you want to see your own business, you want to see your own efforts succeed, right?
Sure.
So you're just even unconsciously sort of, it's easier for you to agree to things which aren't things that you would really want to agree to.
Yeah, turn a blind eye to the things that you don't want to agree to too. And we've spent a lot of time with our Committee on the Present Danger China focused on particularly this phenomenon of elite capture as it relates to Wall Street and the money that Wall Street has, our money, pension funds and mutual funds and so on, investors have been giving them to invest, being, sluiced to the Chinese Communist Party and its companies, even military companies, for heaven's sake. And I thought what was particularly interesting, Yan Ma, in the character you develop in Jim, the epiphanies that he goes through, and I pray that every single, the Jamie Dimons of J.P. Morgan, for heaven's sakes, the Brian Moynahans of Bank of America, just as two prime examples, who recently raised easily $5 billion for a Chinese military company called Cattle. I just pray that they will see this film and realize that the turning that can take place very quickly from somebody who is, very well connected. I think that's the term for it. The Chinese term for it eludes me at the moment, but connected to the local officials or the party or even the highest levels. Suddenly, it's over, and it's a very different experience, is it not? Jan Ma?
Yes, exactly. I guess the film, obviously, this COVID-19, the outbreak happened, right? So the protagonist has to react to it, and it's an inciting instance that changed his life. And like you said, everything changed overnight. He suddenly from a welcoming, like Chinese people's friend, and turn into an enemy, just like that, turn into an enemy of the state. So, but another thing actually behind all this is even imagine if James stayed in China and nothing happened, he would just keep building his biotechnology company and cooperating with China and making a lot of money. In the story, he's building the biggest vaccine company in Asia. So all this, like, is this really what's going to happen? But it's actually not. That's what happened on the surface, because like fundamentally, what the CCP is thinking, they don't treat any foreigners in China as partners, as even competitors. A lot of businessmen in the West, we feel like, oh, we are partners, we are competitors. So I guess that's the fundamental misunderstanding of this regime, that they never thought in that way. And that's how they teach all their children from the elementary school, right? You guys are enemies. You guys with 狼子野心, that means you guys have ambition of a wolf. You want to eat us. We are the sheep. That is the propaganda, the brainwash that which built the foundation of their understanding. So in the end, it turns out like even nothing dramatic really happened. They're not there to partner with you and let you make money. They're actually try to find a way to do like commercial espionage or like technology thefts.
Sure.
And like this is all part of the invisible unrestricted warfare we are talking about.
Yeah.
So yes, so the businessmen in China, is even the situation is not turning for them. I would just say like we need to have the right understanding of the relationship.
Amen.
Because they don't play by the rules. That's what James realized in the end. They don't play by the rules at all. There's no law for them. There's no restrictions for them of any
And they
kind.
are set on destroying us. We're at the end of our time, and there's so much more we could talk about. I thought I might, if I could ask your indulgence, have a bit of a dramatic reading of a comment by a top technologist who was at the White House 2 days ago, as we speak, to announce a major investment by his company. You all know it well, Apple, in the United States. The individual in question is Tim Cook, its CEO. And I just wanted to, hopefully an uplifting note, share his comment. A man who, like Jim, has spent much of the past, decade or better part of two probably, leading his company and doing business in China, manufacturing all the cell phones that we buy and the rest of it. And in the wake of President Trump's tariff policies, and more generally his effort to reshore, manufacturing to our country, Tim Cook said this at the White House, quote, "We're going to keep making investments right here in America, and we're going to keep hiring in America, and we're going to keep building technologies at the heart of our products right here in America because we're a proud American company. And we believe deeply in the promise of this great nation." He thanked President Trump for putting American innovation and American jobs front and center, unquote. I just want to say, I was so heartened by that statement because I believe that, like most of the other big, especially technology companies that have had their roots in this country, they've come to think of themselves as international companies, if not effectively Chinese ones, because that's where they were producing and manufacturing and assembling and the rest of it. But if nothing else comes of what's going on at the moment with the president's trade policies and hopefully in its way with this film as well, people understand what it is about America that must be prized and must be protected, and why they must be putting their shoulders to the wheel to support, yes, this country and the free world, not enabling those who seek its destruction, whether it's through biological warfare or other forms of unrestricted warfare, or perhaps the old-fashioned kinetic kind, which those guys on Wall Street that I mentioned have been enabling the Chinese to build up their military so that they have the option to do that to us as well. So I want to thank each of our marvelous presenters. This has been I think, a profoundly important conversation, not only because of our opportunity to showcase a contributor to our cognitive awareness of what we're up against, but also hopefully our ability to resist it. And that starts with having, as Jekielek said, the American people aware of the danger and equipped to figure out how to support leaders who are seeking to end this practice of unrestricted warfare against us. Joe Wang, Yan Ma, Casey Fleming, Uni Park, Sean Lin, and Jan Jekielek, thank you for your very important contributions to this particular webinar and to the fight in which we are engaged and must be. I want to thank everybody in the audience for listening, and as always, express my appreciation for you joining us for each of these webinars. Subscribe at presentdangerchina.org and go forth and multiply. Didi, back to you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. A video of this webinar will be posted to presentdangerchina.org within a day or so of the program's conclusion. Please share this and our other programs with your elected representatives, colleagues, and other networks. For webinar notices, updates, and news, subscribe to our Substack at presentdangerchina.substack.com and follow us on X at CPD China. Join us again next week for another installment of our Committee on the Present Danger China webinar series on the CCP's unrestricted warfare against America and the free world, and how CCP captured elites betray the USA. Thanks for joining us today. Goodbye.